Hi, we're going to continue our work with the 5-number summary and outliers here in OLI Mod 9. We're going to look at a new graph that will give us the distribution of our data called a box plot. This plot is based on our 5-number summary. It's going to help us identify our outliers, and it will also give us the shape of our distribution, just like a histogram does. So let's go ahead and take a look. It's called a box plot or a box and whisker plot, and it's giving us that visual representation of the distribution of our data set. It's based on the 5-number summary, the IQR, and outliers. So any box plot starts with a scaled number line, and you need to have the full range of your data on the number line. So I've got a number line here from 0 to 320, so we know that will fit all of our data. The first thing we're going to do is start with our box. The box identifies the inner quartile range, well, with a box, and it also has a vertical line at the median. So let me get started on my graph with the box. Q1 is at 130, so there's the left side of my box. Q3 is at 210, so there's the right side of my box. And let me connect that into my box. The median is at 180, so I'm going to put a vertical line there. Now the next thing is the whiskers. The whiskers of our plot extend to the last piece of data before the fences. Okay, so let's go ahead and remember our fences. We had an upper fence of 330, so we know that we don't have any outliers there. The last piece of data before the fence is our maximum value of 320. So this upper whisker is going to extend all the way to that maximum value of 320. Our lower fence, however, was 10. So we know that we have at least one outlier on the lower end because our minimum piece of data is less than the lower fence. But we can't draw the whisker to this value of 10 because the 10 may or may not be a piece of data, and the whisker always needs to end at a piece of data. So let's go ahead and return to StatCrunch to see where we should stop. So right now we've been working with that sodium data. So I'm going to come here to the sodium column. I think trying to just scroll down and see how many pieces of data are less than 10 would be a little bit difficult, but I can go right up here. Notice when I put my cursor up on the name of the column, this arrow appears. Click on that, I get a drop-down menu, and I want to sort my table in ascending order. That's going to start with the smallest piece of data and move to the largest. So now I can see that I actually have a bunch of serials that have that minimum value of 0, and then I bump up to a piece of data that is equal to 15. So this 15 is the last piece of data that does not go beyond that fence of 10. So that's where my whisker is going to end. My whisker is going to end here at 15. It doesn't go to 10 because I don't have any data there. It ends at 15. And then my outliers appear as marks outside the whisker because there's a whole bunch of outliers there at 0. I really have no way to put multiple marks. So that is one thing. When you see a mark outside a whisker, you don't really know how many outliers are represented there. Okay, moving on to our next question here. We're going to use StatCrunch to create a box plot for the column potassium. So, since a box plot is a graph, we'll start with that function menu, and then we will choose box plot. We get a pop-up screen very similar to those we've dealt with already. We're going to use the column potassium, so let me scroll down, choose that. Now we don't have to do too many other things on this instruction screen here. These other options, this area is important. So what's already checked is to use fences to identify outliers. So that's good. We definitely want to be able to see our outliers on the graph. The other thing I like to do is draw the boxes horizontally. So it'll be above a horizontal number line, just like it is on our paper. So let's go ahead, click compute, and see what we see. So this is what we've got. Our question is, does the data set have outliers? And we can see really easily from our graph in StatCrunch that we do have outliers. We have at least 4. We see 4 dots, so we know that there are at least 4. It is possible that each one of them represents more than one piece of data, like it would have had to do with our sodium. But we can go ahead and take a look if you just put your cursor over any part of that box plot to see characteristics of the box plot. So it does confirm there that we have 4 outliers. Each one of those dots is representing just one piece of data. Apparently this lower limit, the lower whisker, goes to 15, although that also must be the minimum piece of data for potassium, right? Because we don't have any dots outside that lower whisker. On the upper side, an upper limit of 240 says that is the last piece of data before we get to those outliers. If you click on your outliers, it will highlight that row in your data set. Oops, can't get it to stay still. So you can see what data is creating those outliers. Okay, I added our answer to the worksheet on 9A, and now for part B, we are asked, what shape does this data set have? Well, remember that each one of the 4 pieces of this box and whisker plot contain 25% of our data. So in this lower whisker here on the left-hand side, we have a lot of data crammed into a very short interval. Lots of data because of the short whisker. It's a little bit more spread out for the next 25% of data, although not that much. And then our third 25% of data is again squished very much into a small interval. And then here on the right-hand side, that 25% of data is really much more spread out and even goes out to some outliers. So lots of data on the left, spread out to the right is giving us a skewed right distribution. And I'm going to just go in and get a histogram of this same data so that we can compare the two. So here's our histogram, and it is in fact showing us that skewed right distribution, just like we saw in the box plot. So you should always be able to match up a box plot and a histogram as far as shape. I'm going to add to my worksheet here that our distribution is skewed right, and then meet you back here for our next video.